Welcome to Southwest Florida Real Estate Update, hosted by local realtors Jim, Michael, and Morgan York of the York Real Estate Group of Downing Fry Realty. Our show will bring you the most up-to-date information on the local real estate market, featuring the leading experts in the real estate field.
Hi, and welcome to the Southwest Florida Real Estate Update. I'm Michael York of the York Real Estate Group, and today we're joined by our host, Jim York, and his guest, Don Ross Jr., President of Ross Title and Escrow.
Thank you, Michael, for the introduction. Well, Don?
Hey, Jim, how are you?
Welcome.
Happy New Year, so to speak.
Yeah, Happy New Year. We're starting our new season here, 2018, going into 2019. So people haven't seen the show before. Just tell them a little bit about yourself.
I am a Naples attorney. I've been practicing for over 30 years. I have Ross Title and Escrow. I have my own law firm. I am a shareholder in Downing Fry Realty, been the attorney there for 25 years. We have 7 or 8 closes at my title company. We've done 25, 30,000 or so closings over the years. My staff, which was really what makes it work, honestly, we've been together. One lady's been with me over 30 years, her daughter over 20 years, her sister another 10 years, a niece, 3 years. So everybody works well together. We work very much like a team instead of just focusing on my job and not trying to pitch in and help out.
Well, you certainly do, and I know you handle our clients very well.
Oh, thank you.
So,
thank you, Jim. Appreciate it.
Don, the people that I wanted to go through the past here in 2017, because our job in this show really is to educate real estate agents and the public about avoiding mistakes. That's the key thing of this show. It's educational. So I wanted us just to summarize the biggest mistakes that were made in 2017 into 2018 here. We're in the mid-year now, but let's start with Irma, because that was a big problem.
Still is.
With the real estate transactions. So.
Irma, and it wasn't just Irma, it was the combination of Katrina in Houston and Irma here and what it did to the workforce. And I would probably have to say the biggest thing I'm going through right now, it's Irma related still. People from up north or other countries come here thinking, well, Irma's been all dealt with and everything's fine, and they still don't read the contracts, and they do not realize that under the Naples Board of Realtors contract that the buyer is responsible for any special assessment after the effective date of the contract, after both parties sign it and deliver it to whoever was the last one to send it out. So they don't realize that our paragraph 6 puts the buyer on the hook for up to 1% of any special assessments, and Irma special assessments are starting to come out now. I mean, here we are in May. Irma was September 10th. And they're just getting it together to the point where the insurance adjusters have gone back and forth. Sometimes associations or homeowners will hire their own to negotiate with the insurance company's adjuster, and get replacement value in many cases for the roof or whatever it might be. And then, if it's a condominium or a homeowners association, then they look at what their deductible is in their insurance policy and get their bids from the contractors and see how much money they're going to have to raise with a special assessment. And I'm seeing people getting really, really upset because they're facing, they know a special assessment is coming, they're told one is coming, they've already signed the contract, they already have their money down, but they don't know the amount or when it might be. Right. So under the contract, it's the buyer's problem. And if it's actually passed before the closing date, it's the buyer's problem up to 1% of the purchase price. They don't want to make it unlimited. So people just get angry and they're very, very upset because they come down here just thinking, like, my entire life really, 10 months later, 11 months later, the hurricane would have been all cleaned up. But it has not, because there's a shortage of workers, there's a shortage of supplies. It's not just us, it's Katrina related too, and people are still struggling with it. So
So if somebody has a listing today, okay, and they're still working out the assessment to do repairs in the community, whatever it might be,
Right.
how would the seller handle that towards a potential buyer? It's listed, it's not under contract.
Well, I'm working on, I've had 6 of them in the last week. I mean, so each one's different depending upon the scenario.
This one, let's say, is, I have a listing like this, okay, we have several, is that the perimeter of the fence in the community was torn down in parts, so they're going to replace it, and they've talked about it at the general meeting.
Right.
And the most cost it would be probably would be $1,000 assessment for each homeowner. That would be the maximum. So how do you disclose that to a new potential buyer if you have it listed?
Two ways. NABOR came out with that Hurricane Irma form, notifying them that there's still issues pending because of Irma. Even though that's not technically necessary, because paragraph 6 in the NABOR contract already covers it, they're coming out with another one so they don't miss it. You know, it's right in your face, Hurricane Irma warning.
Is the seller?
Yeah, it'd benefit the seller to
Right.
give the buyer a heads up, because
Right.
if the buyer is from Minnesota,
Right.
you know, I would have assumed that it
That's
would have been
right.
cleaned up by now. I
Right.
didn't fully appreciate how difficult it might be to get people in there to do the repairs and get your money and get the
Right.
work done. So I would use that, number one. And 2, I would put in the seller's disclosure that the board is still working on it, and here's the telephone number of whoever runs the management company.
Right.
Please call him and confirm the amount, and that potential amount will be negotiated out in the purchase price.
Right.
Now, there are many lawyers who will say you don't have to do this, and they are absolutely right. But I work in the real world where, I mean, no offense to the other attorneys, but where the buyers are going to be ticked. They're just going to be absolutely livid. And it's not so much that it's $1,000, but they feel like they've been duped. And you know, you deal
That's
with
right.
high-end properties, and wealthy people do not like to be duped. So it's a certain psychological way you treat people with respect. I mean, the golden rule, you know, treat that person the way you would like to be treated, and tell them about it. Be upfront. They're going to find out anyways, and it's certainly not going to benefit James York or anybody else not to tell them. I mean, you're going to have one irate person who will never send you another lick of business
Right.
because it's the principle. You knew about this. You knew it was coming. You should have pointed it out. I live in Minnesota. How would I know all the roofs aren't taken care of yet?
Right.
The insurance adjusters are still fighting over certain issues. People are still grappling with things. So that's now. I mean, I'm still dealing with that issue. And related to that is the realization how important it is to have your inspection company do the walkthrough.
That's right.
I mean, that is massive. I mean, the risk of loss paragraph in the contract is both NABOR and FARBAR again being a statewide contract, puts the risk of maintaining the property within certain parameters on the seller between the date the contract signed and the date you close.
Right.
Irma crystallized, I think, for a lot of folks, the difference between the risk of loss for NABOR, which includes landscaping and replacing trees that got knocked down, versus the statewide contract or FARBAR, which simply requires the trees to be pruned or removed. Buying trees on a 5-acre parcel in the estates
Can be expensive.
I was talking to I have this 93-year-old lady who's a client of mine, been for 20-odd years, and she brings every little piece of paper in the office for me to look at. And she was talking about how she lost 63 trees during Irma and her fence. And I'm thinking of this, that can you imagine what it would cost to replace 63 trees? Might be a $200,000 deal, but the trees it cost more than the land does. So having the inspection company do the walkthrough is huge. And I took that lesson. I learned that lesson. It really drove it home to me, and I've been doing this a long time, how important that is. So I have 2 nieces right now who are buying their first home, And I'm beating that into their lovely heads, how important it is to have another set of eyes, because what you and I see pulling into the driveway is different than what our wives would see pulling in the driveway. Another set of eyes is good, plus they're trained to look for these things, plus they did the inspection in the beginning, and they will notice whether the repairs are done correctly and whether the property has been maintained correctly. So that's the big takeaway from Irma.
Well, that's good. Well, we're going to take a little short break here, Don, and we'll be back in 1 minute here.
Thinking of buying or selling a home in Naples, Marco Island, Bonita, or Estero, Florida? Think of the most experienced York Real Estate Group, associated with the #1 brokerage in Southwest Florida, Downing Fry Realty, which produces yearly real estate transactions of over $1 billion. Jim, Michael, and Morgan make up the York Real Estate Group of Downing Fry Realty, with over $275 million in sales transactions, along with offering over 25 combined years' experience in the local market. The Yorks can offer the experience and trust you need in a realtor. Call them today at 239-273-6727 or visit their website at www.naplesyorkrealestate.com.
Looking for a real estate closing agent in Southwest Florida? Ross Title and Escrow has over 25 years experience and has closed over 20,000 residential real estate transactions. Donald Ross Jr., president of Ross Title and Escrow and a practicing attorney in the state of Florida with a degree in taxation, is here to service your needs. Call Mr. Ross or one of our 4 closing agents for a free consultation today.
Welcome back. Don, let's talk about small deposits, because I think that's interesting.
I had a call from actually a realtor that was referred to me by a broker at another company. And a lot of realtors down here, they don't do a lot of work. You move here from another state, and what can I do? I'm retired. And they get their real estate license, and it gives, you have a place to go and social interaction and all that. But the gentleman was asking, how I could be involved and help him. They're selling their place in Pelican Bay, and his wife is a realtor, but she doesn't really do much in the area. How can I help? And I told him that I gave him my email, my cell phone, and I said, you can call me, 7 days a week. You can don't sign anything until we talk, basically. And one of the points I made with the gentleman was, buyers always try to get away, and I do it and you do it. You always try to get away with, what do you think the seller will accept in terms of a deposit? How much can I get away with here? There's an art to, you don't want to expose your buyer too much if you're representing the buyer. That's true. But you need enough down so the seller doesn't go, hey, wait a minute, that's 3 cents. That's ridiculous. So I told him, I gave him my speech on that you might as well just shake hands if it's a $5,000 or a $10,000 deposit, because to get your hands on that money if you're the seller and the buyer walks away from the transaction is really, really hard. I mean, when a deal falls apart, everybody's upset. That's right. The agents are upset, the seller's upset, the buyer's upset, and they all have, it might be because of the loan and everybody thought, and they don't care what the contract says. It's not fair. I get that all the time. It's not fair. So, well, the contract is in black and white, and that's what controls. And then they get to the point where they find out to get their hands on the money, the other party has to sign the termination and release of the deposit. True. And I says, that's not happening. Right. I mean, it almost never happens. I mean, I had it happen yesterday, but that's probably the first time this year that somebody voluntarily gave up their $10,000 deposit. Right. It was in part because I spoke to the gentleman and said, it's $5,000 to retain an attorney to sue over this. Right. And if the seller's from another state or the buyer's from another state, now you have to hire a lawyer in that state to domesticate the judgment and go after them for the attorney's fees. And they might be judgment proof in that other state. You don't know. So you're investing in, a lawsuit is essentially an investment. You're investing X dollars with the attorney to get Y from the opposing party. And if you don't know if the opposing party has money that you can levy on when you prevail, it's a big if, and is it worth it? Is it worth taking that chance in attorney's fees if the deposit is only $5,000 or $10,000? Buyers are more apt to walk away, say, I don't care, I'm not doing it. Related to that, you know how you have a first deposit and then the second deposit? Well, you know, more and more people have, you know, the first deposit be like $1,000, and then the second one is like 15 days later, and it's the $49,000. Let's say it's a $500,000 transaction, you put 10% down. I'll tell the seller, you know, they're going to do their inspection, and they're going to ask for the sun, the moon, and the stars. They don't care whether it's cosmetic. They don't care if it's beyond what's in the contract. They're not going to put their $49,000 down unless they get that new air conditioner, which they're not entitled to under the contract. So it's economic blackmail, because you get sellers who they might need that money to go buy their new home that's being built, and they just assume it's going to happen. I mean, I've gone through this with my own parents. They're selling their home. It's supposed to close next week, and I keep telling them, and my father's an experienced realtor, until the money's in my trust account, don't plan anything, because anything can happen up to the last minute. I mean, I've seen it. People walk away. You could have world events change, you could have the stock market crash, you could have somebody's health change, and the last thing they care about is that deposit. So small deposits are it might as well be a non-binding letter of intent. And a lot of agents just don't even understand that, unfortunately.
Well, that hit that one pretty good, didn't we?
Did I kill that one?
So how about let's try one more, and then we'll wrap it up for today.
Well, permits. I hate to keep harping on permits, but again, using my parents, they're selling their home next week, and my father was a builder, as you were, and when he bought his current home, he immediately discovered, or my mother discovered, we don't really want to downsize. You know, she wants more room to put her Hummels and all that stuff. That in rooms that she never uses. So he had to put in a new septic tank in the front yard, and he pulled a permit. He's an older owner builder, so he pulled his own permit, and he put in the new septic tank. And then Marco Island at that point had the assessment against all the people on the island who weren't already hooked up to city sewer. You know, it was approximately $18,000 to $20,000 that they're being assessed so that they will hook up to city sewer. Well, the problem is, according to the city, there's no CO on the moving of the new septic tank, you know, the creation of the new septic tank. And the buyer wants some assurance that the septic tank was properly filled in. They know the city sewer was properly hooked up, but Marco Island doesn't have any record of it, and my father can't find it, and I'm dealing with a closer at unnamed title company on the other side, and finally, it was actually last evening, I'm on the front lawn standing over where the septic tank used to be, and I called the attorney who owned the title company, who I've known for 30 years and vented profusely. Said, I'm standing where the septic tank was, and the sewer line went right through it. So, I mean, I'll sign whatever you want, guaranteeing that that's where it went. They used the the original hookup point, 5 feet of copper pipe coming out of the front of the house, and it had to go right through the septic tank. So there's no way they missed this, and it was filled in. But old permits are just a nightmare.
Oh, they are.
I mean, the permits were added to the contract in 2016, and we're finding things from 20-odd years ago. This is a variation on the air conditioners that were 20 years old that have since disappeared, replaced with new air conditioners. The shutters, I've got a bunch of those, 19 years old, that were never seed out.
But the other big problem is they could have gotten a permit, but they never had the permit closed out either.
Well, if they never got a permit, then nothing shows up.
Right,
so
but
they
if
wouldn't
they've
have
gotten
known.
a permit,
Yeah.
there's been problems that they haven't closed out the permit.
Well, the
also.
irony of this is my beloved father, you know, again from Massachusetts, did a lot of work without permits back in the day.
Back then, right.
So here he tries to do it correctly, and he actually pulls a permit.
Right.
But it wasn't closed out because
Right.
nobody bothered back then, because it wasn't in the contract and nobody checked. So developers are pretty sharp guys. They figure out in a hurry, I can skip that part of work
Right.
because nobody
That's
checks
right.
on it anyways, and it really isn't important because I know I did it correctly. But when they added it all these years later in 2016, now we have to deal with 20 years worth of BS.
Right. Yeah, because I'm telling people now, ask them if they ever did get it closed out, if they had their air conditioner replaced or
Right.
hurricane shutters, just set the stage, you know, if we're listing a property.
Well, and not
Or
all
we'll do a search too.
yeah,
also.
and you can disclose this stuff, and a lot of times it's just minor Mickey Mouse items.
Right, it
A
is.
sprinkler system from
Right.
23 years ago. It's
That's-
you can
right.
explain to your client, this isn't important. What's the
Right.
city going to do? They're going to
Right.
come out and make you remove a sprinkler system that isn't even there anymore, or the air conditioner that's not there anymore,
Right.
or shutters that have been there 19 years and it's $1 million deal. The odds of that is zero, and they'd probably lose in court anyways. Estoppel would probably preclude that. So, you know, people look at permits as all the same. You know, a fence is just as significant as a kitchen, and it's not. One 2 years ago is just as important as one 22 years ago. They're not. The older it is, the harder it is to, the less significant it tends to become, unless it's the house itself or a kitchen or something structural. You know, they just see permit and they think cancer.
That's
You
right.
know, not all cancer is equally scary. You know, melanoma is way scarier than some minor skin cancer, for example. Is that-
Well, what I suggest to the agents that are watching and our viewers
Mm-hmm.
that are the public is to call Don Ross or myself, and
Oh,
maybe
thank
we
you,
can
thank
answer some of their questions before or after something like this happens.
Well, I get a lot of listing agents who just ask us to run a permit search, and we
That's
do
right.
it.
Yep. I have too. I've
You know,
asked
so
them.
you know.
Right.
You know what's here, and you can give it to the other side.
Mhm.
And you can put it in your seller's disclosure. You can
That's right.
start working on closing it out if it's relatively recent. So
Yeah, we
that's-
do that. And just to wrap this up, a little short thing is condo docs. We're asking you to provide us the condo docs so there isn't anything missed, any amendments or anything.
You do not want to sign a receipt for condo docs until you're sure everything is there.
Everything's in there.
And I've read 3 sets in the last 2 days, and none of the 3 have had everything. The last one I read right before this show, they were missing the frequently asked questions, which is important
That's
because
right.
it sort of summarizes in an easy-to-read fashion, you know, the lease restrictions and the pet restrictions and the visitor restrictions and what kind of car you can have. You can't have commercial vehicles, you know, stuff in a couple of pages versus reading the whole declaration.
That's right.
So that's important. I want people to get it in a form they can wrap their head around.
Well, Don, thanks for starting off our new
Oh, thank
season
you.
here, and
Thank you.
see you next month, okay?
Absolutely.
Thank you.